This Corner with John Ball is brought to you by KNEO 91.7 FM, The Word.
Well, good day to you, Four States. This is Luke Taylor, and I'm filling in for John Ball today here on From This Corner. And I am really excited to let you all know about something going on this weekend over at George Washington Carver National Monument. I'm speaking today with one of their rangers. Her name is Diane Eilenstein, and she came out here to the KNEO studios today to visit with us. And Diane, thanks for coming on out.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad to be here. It's my pleasure.
So we will get to the event here in just a little bit, but let's talk a little bit about George Washington Carver. We got this great piece of history right here in Southwest Missouri that I hope everyone knows about. But if people haven't been out there for a while or need a refresher, tell us a little bit about George Washington Carver and about his faith and the value that this place brings to the community.
Great. Well, the program will be based on George Washington Carver's faith. And so when we think about this famous Missourian, we think about him as a scientist, a teacher, and a humanitarian. He really did live his life to serve his fellow human being. We think about all these great things, this national park named for him, but in fact, he's from right here in Newton County, and he began life at the absolute lowest rung of society. He was born into slavery during the Civil War. Not only that, but he was abducted or kidnapped by outlaws here that were all over this part of Missouri and taken away. He and his mother were both taken away, and he lost her that day. It was a horrible crime that happened, and he was rescued. Someone paid a reward to get him back. He was brought back to the Carver farm without his mother, but he was deathly ill. They expected this baby to die. He's an infant, and with no mother, he's orphaned. He never knew his father, and all of these things happened within the first few, maybe months of his life, certainly before he was old enough to remember. So when you think about what he accomplished, you think about where he came from. Hopefully we're all impressed with how he got there. And truthfully, in my opinion, what held him together and gave him stability during his years of finding his way in life was his faith in God, which took a long time to develop. And so as we read about his letters later in life that he writes about his early years here in Missouri, he really believes he was found that day when he was abducted. He believed he was rescued for a reason. He believed later that God had a purpose for his life, and that must be why this baby had been found and brought back. So that is his way of coping and making sense of what all happened to him when he was little.
Wow. I mean, I've grown up in this area, so I've been to George Washington Carver National Monument many times, and it's right over there just outside of Diamond, Missouri. Been there many times, and I'd forgotten about a lot of this history right here. Yeah. But he went through more adversity in the first year of his life than some people do in their entire lifetime.
Isn't that the truth? And you look at his attitude, very kind, positive, optimistic person who no doubt had his dark times like we all do, but he seems to have been able to cope with the very horrible things that happened to him early in life, and to his mom and to his brother, by his faith in God, which gave him strength. I brought along a short clip of a letter that I just want to read, and it says it all about what kind of religious training he did or did not receive as a little boy growing up on the farm in Diamond. And again, that's just 15 miles from the studio here, so it's just right here outside of Neosho. He said this: "I was just a mere boy when converted, hardly 10 years old. God just came into my heart one afternoon while I was alone in the loft of our big barn, while I was shelling corn to carry to the mill to grind into meal. A dear little boy came by one Saturday morning, and in talking and playing, he told me he was going to Sunday school tomorrow. I was eager to know what a Sunday school was. He said they sang hymns and prayed. I asked him what prayer was and what they said. I don't remember what he said. I only remember that as soon as he left, I climbed up into the loft, knelt by the barrel of corn, and prayed as best I could. I don't remember what I said. I only recall that I felt so good that I prayed several times before I quit. And this was my simple conversion, and I have tried to keep the faith."
Wow. From a young age.
You can learn a lot from that letter.
Yeah. Yeah, very true, very sincere right there. And like you said, it just really shows the heart behind the man.
So this is the beginning of his faith. He's 10, which is a great awakening age when we start to understand abstract concepts like God. But we also learned that he'd never been to a Sunday school up to that point in his life and didn't know what prayer was. So that tells you a lot. But we also know that his faith continued to build throughout his teenage and young adult years, through his whole life. Yeah.
And so to kind of refresh people, he didn't just have an amazing and interesting childhood, but I mean, as an adult, he accomplished quite a bit too. And tell people about that and how his faith played a role in his adult life.
In his adult life, well, I know I can tell you that he was a Bible class teacher for many years at his job at Tuskegee Institute. And his prolific letter writing habit is filled with lots and lots of references and credit given to God for his opportunities and abilities in life. So after he left the after he left the Diamond Farm, he moved here to Neosho to go to school. Slavery had been abolished a few years earlier, and so he was allowed to attend school, but it had to be in Neosho, the closest school for any black children. And here in Neosho, the black community had put their own school together in a little house over on Young Street. And there, very close to the school, lived a family named Andrew and Mariah Watkins. And George did not know them, but he actually walked the 8 miles from Diamond to Neosho to attend school, and he didn't have anywhere to live. So you might call him a homeless teenager at that point. So he kind of sneaked into their barn, and she found him, brought him in the house, fed him breakfast, got his story, and he ended up living with Mariah and Andrew Watkins.
Wow.
For approximately a year, maybe. And we know that he attended the school there in Neosho. But what's more important, I mean, school is what he wanted. But Mariah Watkins planted a couple seeds. She gave him his very first Bible, which he kept for life, a treasure. And she took him to church. And it would have been the Neosho Second Baptist at that time. Or today, I believe is what it would be today. But up until that point, he'd only been experiencing maybe the circuit preachers out there in Diamond. Now in Neosho, he's at basically an AME church. And she realized when he was maybe 10 or 12, he was going to go on and get his education elsewhere. And she told him, when you get done, you have to share your knowledge with our people. And he knew exactly what she meant. And so he takes off, and many years passed as he pursued his education, witnessed lots and lots of racial violence, was rejected at schools and towns, and all sorts of things we'll just have to pass up. But he did live with some very influential mentors, including the Seymour family, a black family in Kansas. And there they attended a Methodist church, and he ended up teaching Bible classes. So his faith is developing, his Bible knowledge is building. And also he attended Presbyterian church with them in Minneapolis, Kansas. So he applied to the Presbyterian school called Highland College, got there, and was rejected due to racism. So what he realized, and this is a hard lesson in life, is that racism even permeated religion at that time. And so he ended up moving off to Iowa after many years in Kansas, and there his first goal after finding a place to sleep was to go to church. And so he ended up at the Methodist church, and there he met some of the key mentors in his life again. And this is the Milholland family. You can learn about them at the park. But Dr. and Mrs. Milholland took this young man in, let him use their home library, and helped him get into Simpson College, which is a Methodist supported school, still there today. And it was like the perfect decision for him to go to Iowa and to go to Simpson College, because he said this of the student body and the faculty. And this is a quote. He said, "They made me believe I was a real human being." So he treated him as a fellow Christian and a fellow human being. And this kind of helped build his confidence. He ended up going to Iowa State, where his life intersects these key people in life. And so Dr. James Wilson was a Bible class teacher and very involved in the YMCA, and George got involved. And so by the time he graduated with a master's degree in agriculture in 1896, George Washington Carver knew that God had a great work for him to do. And so Booker T. Washington brought him down to Tuskegee. He took the job, believing he could fulfill what Mariah Watkins had told him back here in Neosho. And that is, make a difference in the world and share your knowledge.
Wow.
So that's how he got to Neosho.
Yeah.
And to Tuskegee. And all of those years are spent in building his faith in God, and that seems to get him through some very difficult things that he experienced.
Well, if anybody just tuned in, we're speaking today with Diane Eilenstein. She's a ranger over there with the George Washington Carver National Monument, not very far from here, just right over there in Diamond, Missouri. And I'm so thankful she's came out to the station today to share a little bit about the life of George Washington Carver, and also we'll talk about an event coming up there soon in just a few minutes. But it's clear, Diane, as you talk about all this, that God was really guiding his life and used him for a great purpose, brought him through so much, but used him to do a lot in this world. He became a great scientist. And was there ever any contradiction in George Washington Carver's mind between faith and science, like we see so many people try to make a contradiction there today?
Oh, wow. Great question. And it was quite relevant, during his lifetime as well. First, short answer is no. He never separated God from science because he believed that all things, the animal, the mineral, and the vegetable kingdoms, I think he called them, but were all interconnected, that God had created them all. And so there's 1,000 quotes about that from Mr. Carver that talk about how he could see God's handiwork in all of these things that are created. So no. However, he experienced much criticism from some people because he didn't leave his faith over here in this corner while he went over here in the science lab. He always combined them. In fact, Luke, he called his lab God's little workshop. He believed things were being revealed to him as a man with an education who could share it with the more common people who had not been given that opportunity. And so he was bringing what he called his knowledge down to the man farthest down. He'd been there. He knew what it was like. And so when he moved to Tuskegee, he was not only bringing his faith and his science with him, but he totally understood racism and the segregated society that we had at the time. And so he brought his creations out of the lab, things that had been revealed to him, and shared them with people so they could live better lives.
Wow. Well, he just faced adversity on every front, but he lived an amazing life. He overcame all that stuff and did so much for the world. And I just love what we're hearing about today, about the faith of George Washington Carver. You all actually have an event coming up this weekend that's going to be telling people about, I'm sure we've just kind of scratched the surface on a lot of what you're going to be talking about this weekend. So tell us about the event that's going to be held there at the monument here in a few days.
Every weekend we have some kind of a ranger program, a walk, a talk, a tour, something special event. But this weekend, Saturday and Sunday at 1 p.m., we will have a ranger talk called A Man of Great Faith, George Washington Carver's Walk of Faith. So we're going to be sharing a lot more in-depth information. So it's inside the visitor center. Come on out. You should probably budget about half an hour of your time for this. And we'll just be sitting and probably be accompanied with some photographs of George and the important mentors in his life. And it's free of charge. So if you just want to know a little bit more, come out Saturday or Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock.
All right. So that's going to be this Saturday and this Sunday, 1 o'clock. And like I said before, I was out at the George Washington Carver Monument all the time growing up. In school, we had field trips up there all the time, and just always had a blast. I was out there again this past weekend, and I was amazed. It's still so perfect and beautiful out there. It's been well maintained over the years. So if people haven't been out there for a while, this is a great time to come back and to see this event this weekend. I was also thinking this would be a great kind of field trip, especially if you have if you're a homeschool family. This would be a great thing to bring the kids to and let them learn a little bit about this great man of science, but also a great man of faith.
Absolutely. And homeschool families come to visit us all the time. Guided or self-guided, doesn't matter. With or without a reservation, matters not. Beautiful picnic area. Kids can run in front of you safely, and they're not going to get lost. It's about a mile-long trail. But we also have homeschool days. These are structured education programs throughout the year where we'll be doing art workshops or science labs or candle dipping. We're even going to do an Underground Railroad program in February, which we can talk more about that later. But yeah, these are free of charge. It's always free to visit the park, and we're open 7 days a week, all year long except Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's Day. So it's available for you. And I have one of my favorite quotes I'd love to share with everyone before we leave.
Please do.
All right. So we talk about making a difference in the world and how God guided his life, and this is what he said. And we actually have this put on the cemetery exhibit. Okay. Well, someday I will have to leave this world. And when that day comes, I want to feel that I have an excuse for having lived in it. I want to feel that my life has been of some service to my fellow man. And that is George Washington Carver.
Yeah.
And his service, of course, he is implying is through the strength and the opportunities that God has given him.
Yeah. Well, he definitely did make a difference with his life, and God absolutely used him in many ways. So he's got a great story, guys. I think everyone in the four-state area should know his story, and I hope you do make plans to come out to George Washington Carver National Monument once in a while and just get refreshed on him, because there's a lot of lessons we can learn from his life, and he did a lot of good. The event, it's called A Man of Great Faith. Is that right? And that's going to be Saturday and Sunday, 1:00 p.m. there at George Washington Carver National Monument, just outside of Diamond, Missouri. And I'm grateful for what we got to learn today, what we got to share with our audience. We've been speaking with Diane Eilenstein. She's a ranger out there at the monument. And Diane, thanks for coming down to the studios today.
You're welcome. Thanks for the invitation.
From This Corner with John Ball has been brought to you by KNEO 91.7 FM, The Word. You can watch this episode and many previous episodes of From This Corner on our YouTube channel, linked to our website at www.kneo.org.